Hi, my name is Rob King, and I am an independent filmmaker from Toronto, Canada. I've made about 6 feature films, 3 TV movies, recently made a mini-series for Netflix, several feature documentaries, music videos in my time, some commercials, and I'm still alive and kicking. In the fall of 2016, I made a feature film called The Humanity Bureau, starring Nicolas Cage. It's a dystopian film set in the future where global warming has devastated the Earth. The United States is building walls around its cities. It's formed an agency to determine the value of every citizen. And it's about an agent who works for the government, who is also in search of a son that he's never known, and comes to realize that everything he's been doing up to this point has been a giant lie. And so he, his son, and the woman who's been caring for his son end up going on the run for the Canadian border while being chased by the hero's ex-colleagues. The Humanity Bureau was shot 3 ways. It was shot in the standard film format. It was also shot in Barco Escape, which is a 3-screen format that's actually now defunct and being replaced by something new called ScreenX. And it was also, there was a virtual reality component to the film. As a director, it was extremely challenging because, first of all, we had a very short shooting schedule. Most of it was shot outdoors in a remote location, which initially we were told would be dry and hot, but as it turned out, the temperature dropped to -16 and it snowed for almost the entire film. So we had this immense challenge of trying to get just the feature itself done, getting ourselves in and out of locations every day, and working with a cast who were wearing wardrobe meant for much warmer weather. At the same time, we were also shooting every day with these special rigs that would get us this 3-screen format. And in there, the producer had also informed me we would be making this virtual reality component that would help market the film. Well, this was all very new to me, and I wasn't too thrilled by the idea because at first I found it just interfered with my day, and I didn't really understand the technology. However, having come to the end of that film and moved on to a second one called Distorted, which also uses virtual reality, I've become a convert to that technology and to the immense power and ability it has to help market the feature film. Well, that's a little outside my, let's say, pay grade. In the 2 films I've been involved with, the producers handled that. But essentially where their financing came from was through their investors. They were able to convince their investors that having a virtual reality component would help market the film and therefore help realize a larger profit back. So in other words, if the investors were willing to throw in an extra $100,000 or $200,000 for this virtual reality component, they had a greater likelihood of a return on their overall investment on the film. The marketing approach for a VR film, at least in the 2 examples I've been involved with, involves connecting with companies who are heavily involved in VR, especially in terms of things like gaming, and are now putting up sites or including on their sites VR films or VR components of films. There's, of course, millions and millions of people who are online gaming in VR, but one of the things I think people are learning is that very few of the VR content that was out there was really story strong. And so when you're making a feature film and you spin off this VR component, you already have the advantage that you're working off the original script idea. So you have a kind of a strong story. and that seems to that's exciting to the people who are providing VR on various platforms, and obviously to the people who are using those platforms in order to view content. Okay, I've done 2 feature films with a VR component, and in the first one I didn't embrace it at all because I was shooting in 3 formats: standard, Barco Escape, and VR. And at the time I just thought that VR was really a royal pain in the butt, because we would have to well, our film was being shot outdoors in the wintertime, so already we had very little daylight to work with. We were working in remote areas, which made it very difficult to get trucks and people and lights and everything we needed in there. And somewhere in the day we would have to stop in order that these VR scenes would be shot. So it was really felt like a competition for the sunlight and for the main content that I was trying to achieve. However, by the end of it all, I realized that this was an extremely important tool in order to help market the film. And so when I went on to the second one, I said, well, rather than fight it, I'm going to embrace it. So I became more involved in the VR script. I ended up directing all of the scenes. I helped the cast buy into it because it was new for them, and they also sometimes feel an interruption in their day. Because they often have to learn some new lines and things that aren't part of the larger script. And so I was able to be the consigliere, the diplomat, the person who was able to help sell it to them as a very valuable tool for all of us. And then to encourage them to realize, like I did, that it can actually be a fun part of the day shooting it, because you have to get rid of everybody and everything, all the lights, all the gear, and the actors get to do the whole scene from beginning to end without somebody yelling cut. So they really like that. You're spinning off a virtual reality component to your film, and you're working with the actors. Well, first of all, you already have scenes that are in the script, so the actors know them. Although you may have to change some of the dialogue. The biggest thing is you usually have to change the blocking from what the original scene was, because in VR you really want to put that camera sort of centrally, so your background walls are further away at all points from the camera. And you have challenges of lighting, because you can't actually have any movie lights on a VR set. It's either natural sunlight or it's practical sources that would logically be in a set, like a lamp that might be beside a couch. So then you would want to move your actor, if it's a night scene, over by that lamp in order to get some light on their face. So you work out the blocking, and you work out, you want the visual and audio experience to change for the viewers, so you may end up having an actor starting on one side of the camera and another one coming, say, down a stairway or around a corner, so that their footsteps are heard and the viewer turns their head and sees that actor coming towards them. So it becomes like theater, it's like dance almost in terms of blocking those actors. For the viewer, which is essentially the camera, the viewer and the camera are one and the same, and they're standing in the middle of the stage, and they're able to pivot themselves all around. You want that to be very immersive and exciting, and not for the audience to be stuck looking only in one direction. So that whole dance is really the challenge of working with the actors, and that amazing 360-degree camera that's plunked in the middle of a room. Well, I think the next generation of filmmakers should be entrepreneurs. Personally, I feel that artists have been entrepreneurs since the beginning of times, some more successfully than others. But there are so many, technology has come to the point where anybody can pick up any sort of camera and make some kind of a film. People are making films even with smartphones. And there are so many platforms and ways that films can be viewed, but the old vertical structure of filmmaking is dying. It's now become a very sort of lateral process where a film gets released maybe in some theaters and on VOD, and maybe there's a VR component. All these different ways which are simultaneously being distributed. So although the world is always constantly saying we need all this content, the fact remains that there are millions of people competing to provide that content. And in order to do that and do it well, you need money. And so what you have to do is convince people who have the money why you should get it instead of somebody else, how your project is original, how your project is going to return something to those investors, those sorts of things. So, nobody else is going to do it for you. You can find a producer who will help you do that, but as the filmmaker, you're the one with the vision, with the passion for the project. But that alone isn't going to get you a film made. You're going to have to take that passion and also invest it into the idea that you are a business and that you need people to invest in that business of you and your project. And you're going to have to do it in ways that are catchy and exciting and impart that passion on investors who are wanting to give people money, but they have to be convinced. So you have to be two kinds of storyteller. One who tells the story in the film and one who tells your story as a filmmaker and why you are unique and original and a good investment. Look, I think all artists need to be entrepreneurs. You need to combine those skills, and they're not so different from each other in some ways. I mean, artists imagine something out of nothing. They create something out of nothing. They take a piece of clay and shape it into something amazing. They put words to a page that moves people. They shoot images and add sound to it and add music to it in ways that move and excite people. So that kind of imagination is exactly what, entrepreneurs are like. They dream about the best vacuum cleaner in the world. They dream about the best electric car in the world. They dream about a tool that helps you eat noodles easier without getting it all over your clothes. And they convince somebody to put money into that. So they're visionaries. They're people with enormous imaginations, dreamers, just like artists are. So an artist today needs to really tap into that skill they already have and think about the part about doing business isn't boring and unartistic. I mean, producers are artists. They've figured out ways to raise money to convince people to invest in films, and that in itself is an amazing art. Well, if you want to make VR films right now, I mean, they have to be shorter because nobody could stand to watch a 90-minute film in virtual reality. First of all, it'd be really expensive, and secondly, people would probably get physically ill because the experience is so new. But there are all sorts of companies who are providing VR content on a variety of platforms. And they're looking for material. They're looking for stuff with really good stories. So there is a market out there. Now the other thing about it is the technology itself is evolving so rapidly. It's amazing. I've seen it evolve in just the last 4 months, and in 4 months from now it'll have evolved even more. So we filmmakers are used to making high quality films, and when we see the VR content we're sometimes surprised by the quality of it because we're shooting it in 6K, 8K, maybe soon even in 10K, but the systems which provide the VR aren't actually coping with that much information yet. That's going to change very rapidly. So my, one bit of advice is don't invest a bunch of money in VR cameras, which are going to change in 4 to 6 months from now and be even bigger and better, unless you can really afford to. Find ways to maybe share that with other filmmakers or rent that, or I don't know, maybe create a cooperative of filmmakers who can share that equipment, but don't put all of your money into technology that's evolving so quickly, because I've done that in my past and I'm still here, but I cried about it a lot. So